Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now been commenced. It is March 2nd at 4 p.m. This meeting is held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak, to avoid feedback and background noise. For those of you who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you are leaving the meeting so that we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the state's open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. So we're going to do a roll call. I'm present. Michael Edmonds.
Present.
Olga Flores. Appears to be absent. Sharia Jimenez.
Present.
Monica Lane. Appears to be absent. Liz Wilson.
I'm here.
Liz. Jay Young.
Here.
Mindy Bernstein.
Here.
And Lori Mazurbo.
I'm here.
And our ex officio members, Maggie Amato Tejas. Appears to be absent. Wendy Asher. Absent. Marianne Bierling.
I'm here.
Mark Clark.
Present.
Vicky Cusino. Absent. Dan Sullivan.
I'm sitting in for Dan Sullivan, Joel Gastelum with Pima County.
Hi, Joel. Okay. Okay, Corin Manning, I believe, is absent today. And Liz Morales.
Present.
There you're here, Liz.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. So first of all, adoption of the meeting minutes from our May 11th meeting. I actually did not see those posted online. Did we want to table that?
I didn't receive them by email.
I sent them out via email, but they were not yet posted online. We can absolutely table it to the next meeting and have folks do this, adopt them at the next meeting. And I should admit the person that normally takes minutes wasn't here, so I sort of threw them together. So that's why they were a late addition.
Okay. Okay. Then we're gonna, without objection, we're gonna go ahead and table that item.
Okay.
So the next agenda item is item number 3, to call the audience. This is the time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting law, Commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as agenda item for future meetings. So with that, I'd like to put it out there. Is there anybody who would like to speak today? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is to finalize our mission and our goals. So this is going to be following up from our meeting a few weeks ago. We discussed changing both the mission and goals. And I'm trying to remember, Poonam, did we want to do the goals first? I thought we were going to try to do the goals and then finish up on the mission, or did we say we wanted to do the mission first?
I think if it looks like the mission reflects the input, the rich input last time, then let's do that first, because sequencing that makes the most sense. What we don't want to do is to spend too much time on mission. Frankly, we were a bit surprised at how long it took last time, and so we ran out of time on the goals. Here's the great part: is you had some really deep and important conversations. So hopefully, all of that's reflected in the mission. So take a look, and hopefully, it is something that sits sanguine, in which case, if we can approve it and move on, that would be best.
And I'll share my screen. The one thing I did want to say is, based on the feedback we got last time, and Allison, feel free to jump in here. Allison with HCD took a stab at really trying to take what she heard and make some changes to it. In particular, there was some discomfort. It's not sharing. Oh, there we go. Now, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. It's for some reason doesn't have the box around it. In particular, the third item was the one that people seemed the most uncomfortable with, and the thinking there was taking the idea that the name of the commission being Equitable Housing and Development, really wanting to make sure the developer piece is captured, but in a way that's hopefully more reflects more than the idea of trying to be collaborative and providing housing for the community. And so, and Allison, did you have anything else to add in terms of the current proposed mission?
If I might, Mr. Chair, is it okay with you?
Yep.
Okay. And so just a quick reminder, this is to answer the question why we exist. The first paragraph sort of answers that. The three sub-bullets stipulate to things that will be essential non-negotiable components of the answer. So the commission will review, investigate, recommend actions to the mayor and council based on research data and inclusive input to increase ultimately the number of housing units that will. And the three things, well, the two changes that I think are reflected, hopefully, is in the first bullet, as you saw it last time, there was discussion about explicitly, what about people without housing? What about the homeless? And so this has been modified to say that out loud really clearly, which is that last phrase, and those without housing. The second was enhanced to specifically also talk about structural disinvestment, which I think came up during our conversations. And then the third, as Ann just mentioned, is to find a slightly different way to say, to declare the intention that whatever we advance in terms of recommendations will also cultivate better partnershiping to solve the problem.
And thank you, that's helpful. One thing too, and Mike, feel free to jump in here. One thing that Mike has mentioned a couple times, and I have found it really helpful when he looked at the ordinance, the words that stood out to him, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mike, so feel free to jump in here, but are review, investigate, and recommend. So in terms of the role of the commission, and so we really felt like hearing that from Mike, distilling a lot of information and really clear points, we wanted to get that in there.
And if I may throw this in real quick, in regards to the fiscal year 2022 annual action plan from the city of Tucson in the executive summary, if you look on page 63 and start to scroll down a few paragraphs to where they talk about CEHD, they also clarify some of the language that we are working with in clarifying our mission and our goals and our focus as well.
So the question is,
where
for
was
all of
that,
you,
Mike?
Oh, that was in you all may not have access to it right now, so you may have to go search for it, but it's the fiscal year 2022 annual action plan from the city of Tucson, and it's the executive summary on page 63, and AP-75, barriers to affordable housing. And they talk about I think there's four major areas of discussion here. Developers, number one. Housing market study, number two. Vulnerable neighborhood index, number three. And then CEHD.
Hey, Mike, if that's going to be discussed throughout this meeting, would you mind copying and pasting the link to put it in the chat?
Yeah, let me see if I've got the link. Is that, I assume that's acceptable for a meeting. I don't think there's anything against that. Is that correct?
I think it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm worried about the open meeting things. I'm just trying to make sure we don't.
So the question really for all of you, especially all of you, is this a worthwhile and important why to then justify the amount of time and energy and ideas that you're going to advance? And so this is out of the ordinance plus the discussions and hopefully reflects the input from last time. So if this is good enough, we're looking for good enough. Perfection is elusive and actually doesn't exist.
There's something would like to just discuss briefly. In the first paragraph, the commission will review, investigate, recommend action based on research, data, and inclusive public input. And I find that a bit constraining in that there may be ideas that we come up with that are not based on research or data or inclusive public input that comes from the synergy of this group. And when we put these parameters around what we're going to do, it takes away the opportunity for creativity.
So great point, Mindy. Is there a solution? Do you want to see the word creative in here somewhere? Do you want to, two ways to go. You either allow for that possibility or we delete research, data, and inclusive public input and don't even address the how, right?
I'm not attached on how that's done. I leave it to those of you with brains. So.
I mean, you could literally say based on research, comma, data, comma, inclusive public input, comma, and creativity.
And
or to innovatively, something like that.
Or solutions, or I don't know. My brain's not working really well today. If anybody wants to help pitch in for.
So I'm sorry, Poonam, and I would just say, not say based on, to include or to considering research data and inclusive public input. So that way we're not trying to get everything in that sentence.
Good. Considering research data and inclusive public input to increase the number of housing units that will. Does that sit better, Mindy?
Yeah, I think
less constraining.
Yes.
Great. Okay, super. Any other thoughts about it? Reactions?
I do have a question. It's just this one paragraph makes it seem like the goal of this commission is only to increase housing units, and I want to clarify, is that the only goal of this commission? Because I thought it was a commission that wasn't only development.
You know, I'm just going to share, because I've had a lot of conversations with the mayor and council. The commission can have, as we know, many purposes, and I don't know that we're going to capture every purpose that we might ever use the commission for, but the commission was pulled together to really further affordable housing and equitable housing for all people. So that really was the impetus to get this commission together. Not to say that this, and I really want to make sure we're not trying to put the whole kitchen sink in everything that we do. Please know we'll have a lot of opportunities to do things in addition to, but I think that, the idea of supporting housing development, equitable housing development is the primary goal of this commission, among other supportive functions, advisory functions.
Okay, so maybe the name of the commission should be changed in addition to that, so that it's
again, it's Commission on Equitable Housing Development. So making sure we're providing, so I don't think it's inconsistent with what I just said.
On equitable housing.
Okay. So maybe a little bit of specificity on what kind of housing unit?
I think the mayor and council settled on this name. So I think I think we're really just trying to make sure that this commission has good focus and a good mission. Again, not trying to keep, put you guys in a box. There's no box. There's always opportunities to do additional things. But I think there is some priorities that we'll identify today that we can focus on, but continue to say, hey, what about this? That's always, this commission is wide open to new ideas and new things. So don't feel like whatever you all agree on today is going to be the only thing you can do. It will not be.
Mindy, you've got your hand up again. Or still?
Yeah, no, it's new. Liz, I hear what you're saying loud and clear. And as I read through the bullet points underneath, I think it's addressing the concerns that you have about boxing us in too much. That it says we'll be looking at housing and for people without housing. So it addresses homelessness, about the barrios, which is one of my, does that shift that for you?
I have no further input.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Liz. Any other comments, thoughts, reactions? Otherwise, I think process-wise, Jim, you do need a motion, yes, to adopt it?
I believe we do. So do you guys want to put it to vote, or is there any other further comments anyone has? Okay, then would somebody like to make a motion to adopt, actually, Ann, can you throw it back up on the screen for a second? Mindy, go ahead before we make this.
I make a motion that we accept this statement or these words, this
mission statement
as our mission statement.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so I'm going to go down and state each of your name and say aye or nay. So Mike Edmonds.
Aye.
Olga Flores. Olga?
Olga is not attending, I believe.
Oh, Olga's absent. You're right. I have to read my own notes. Sharia Jimenez.
Aye.
Liz Wilshin.
Aye.
Jay Young.
Aye.
Mindy Bernstein.
Aye.
Lori Mazurbo.
Aye.
And the ayes have it. So congratulations. We have a new mission statement.
Jim?
Yes.
I don't know if it's Rachel or if it's Allison, but if you see in the bold where it says current proposed mission, why does the commission we exist? I don't know who's doing the typing.
Oh,
There you go. Thank
what
you.
do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Okay.
And to some extent, one way to look at the mission is that if the analogy that always makes the most sense to me is out of a boat, right? So there's a keel at the bottom of the boat, and the deeper that keel goes in the water, the more stable the boat is. So think of a canoe or a kayak with a little nub of a keel. Because that keel is not so deep, any amount of turbulence on the surface is going to capsize that vessel. And so in leadership and committee work, in major public policy, societal issues, which is what you are taking on together, to have something that runs deep in the why we exist is really important, because the complexity is going to find you. There's never any shortage of complexity in these kinds of issues. The challenge as leaders is to maintain some depth of keel so that you've got a way to manage through the inevitable turbulence without capsizing or getting distracted, right? And so you've done great work in the conversations that you had last time. And there were some, moments of tension in the discussion. That was a rich discussion. So well done. Just keeps me as your #1 groupie status. Way to go.
Okay, so our next agenda item is, let me find my agenda here, is agenda item number 5, prioritize the SMART goals. The acronym SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And we've got 2 separate sets of goals, which are short-term goals, things we want to accomplish the first year, and long-term goals, which are more in the 2 to 5 year time frame. So when we met to talk about the agenda item today, one of the questions that I had was, how do we know how many goals we want to have? And Poonam's response was that typically, the way these things tend to go, there's probably going to be several that kind of rise to the top of the list. And, so once we complete our voting, I think we'll talk as a group about where the cutoff line is. Let's see here. So we're going to be taking a Zoom poll to vote on the goals. I think, we had asked if any of you have additional goals to add to the list to submit those before today's meeting. Were any additional goals received, Ann?
No.
Okay. So, Poonam, do you want to go through and review these?
Yeah, I think
start with the short term.
Yeah, I think for Ann's the boss of she's the expert. So what a couple of things that I just want to sort of offer as a frame as we go to this next section. First, it is simply really difficult to be excellent at too many things at the same time. And in our personal lives, we know that, which is why on a Saturday, even though we've got 16 things that need to get done, somehow we manage to sort of create a list of priorities and then pick off the few that we know we can get accomplished. And so the same is true no matter how big a public policy or community-wide issue it is. Just remember, it's really difficult to be excellent at too many things. So the idea would be to pick carefully the things that the question I want to pose as we go through this is, what are in the short term, in the next 12 months, what are the things that we can do with vigor and excellence that will advance our mission, right? And then similarly, for the next section, what are the things that we can do with excellence over 2 to 5 years that would really transform affordable housing or help to transform affordable housing in Tucson? So that's one thing I just want to sort of post-it note for you. The second thing is that I do think that the Pareto principle applies. 20% of your actions generally are going to yield 80% of your results. And so it's very easy to deploy a whole bunch of time, energy, and talent to things that are only going to be a small component of the solution, right? And as leaders, I think the opportunity for you is to say the few things that we will do with excellence, we also believe that those are the 20% of actions that will yield us 80% of the results. So I just wanted to say that as 2 little post-it notes to keep up as we go through. I don't know about you, I can't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday, and neither could Jim and Mike. And so the thinking here is to have Ann go through. We have a list of a total of 10 that you came up with as short-term thoughts that emerged during the last meeting. There were 7 that were long-term. And so if useful, we were just going to have Anne remind us, because she apparently can remember what she ate for lunch yesterday. So just to go through and remind ourselves, and then we'll go through a process of having you vote, but it's to declare, so that we can together see what the consensus is that reveals among all of us. Fair enough? So just trust the process a little bit. Can't be excellent at too many things. What are the 20% of our actions that'll yield 80% of our results? And talk us through and give us a refresher reminder.
And I'm actually going to tag team this with Liz. So Liz and I were talking about this earlier. And so we're going to go through the 10 and make comments. And Liz, do you want to kind of start off first? And then we wanted to clarify, because some of the goals do get more into issues around homelessness. We did want to have Jason Thorpe, our staff member here at HCD, talk a little bit about what HCD is doing in the homeless sphere. But Liz, I'm going to turn it over to you for now.
So I just want to start by saying that everything that's on this list, I am completely supportive of. I think they're fabulous goals. I think they are things that we should be working on as a department and collectively as a community. So I want to thank you, all of you, for your input. It really, really reflects your passions and your commitment to what we're doing here. So I just want to start there. I want to also say that I appreciate what you said, Poonam, because I really want to utilize all of you with the time and energy that you can give, because I know all of you have many other obligations and responsibilities. So the fact that you're committed to this commission is just a huge, I'm just grateful for. So I just wanted to start with a couple of things. Providing a set of recommendations to mayor and council on activities, levers, tools city can leverage to increase momentum. I think that's exactly what mayor and council is hoping that this commission can do, and learning how and understand what is preventing housing from being built in the community. Again, I think is critical to trying to help us move forward. Now, and please just jump in if on
yeah. I mean, and I'm just going to piggyback on what Liz had said. I really feel like the housing market study, we always assumed we'd have this data, and from that, we'd be able to turn it over to your group to help us identify those recommendations. And Liz and I met with Phoenix because Phoenix is about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ahead of us in this process. And the main staff member who helped develop the policies for Phoenix is definitely interested to come be on one of our meetings, talk about their process and how they arrived at their recommendations. So just wanted to throw that in, that I agree completely with Liz, that I see that as a really important next step in the work that's been done. And we're here to help provide tools to help you with that.
The third bullet around reviewing city budget and community input to give input for opportunities regarding allocations for housing. I will share that on that item. I want you to be, all of you to be connected and on how to do that. That process really happens on a citywide level with the budget, our mayor and council through their budget process and town halls. We can always bring to you what is being proposed for the housing budget, but really providing input on the overall city budget, I think is better. Your time is better utilized through those processes and public input. That's my opinion. But I really think that would be, your time would be better served through those avenues. Anne, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that keeping in mind the commission's charge is to support housing and issues around housing, including the 3 areas in the mission statement. So focusing on the areas that you are interested in recommending and connecting, I think is important. And keeping in mind, we don't have, HCD doesn't have a whole lot to say about what other departments do. So focusing on the resources available to HCD and potentially advocating for resources for those areas, I think is the main area that this commission can really be helpful in.
The next,
sorry, Liz, if I could just inject one little side thing. After several of us had a debrief, Jim, Mike, Ann, and I did after the last one. As we prepared for this, we actually asked the staff as they're reviewing these to, if relevant, to offer their own guidance if they had any. So it's not to tell you what you should do, it's to give you an additional pixel of information that is the staff perspective. Fair enough? So just don't want you to feel like you're being sort of hampered or pushed by staff. So it was in response to the request. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. I definitely don't want people to feel lectured or anything by us. So the other piece, the next three, which again, homelessness is such a major issue and such a priority for our department. And it's also a major priority for mayor and council. They have, plan to bring on a Housing First director. So there's a lot of work around that. And so those three things are critical, but I think this is a good place to insert some input from Jason around the work and from my perspective, having worked in other communities where the continuum of care is separate and apart from the city, the cities we often would work in coordination with, and I do believe that's the way we should be working. But Jason, I'd love your input on those three really important goals.
Sure, thanks, Liz. And to everyone else, I've had the joy of working with some of you, but a few new names in the group. So I'm Jason Thorpe. I use he, him pronouns. I work here in HCD. And within my scope, I manage the Tucson Pima Collaboration to End Homelessness, which is the HUD continuum of care that's responsible for regional planning related to homelessness, as well as oversight of HUD investments in homelessness in Pima County, so not the city exclusively. And so, I've had the pleasure of listening into your meetings the last several and sort of eavesdropping as a staff member. And it's been really exciting to hear the enthusiasm and care that so many members of this group have around the issue of homelessness. And as I look at these goals, I see a great amount of overlap with goals identified in the Continuum of Care strategic plan as well. So that's really heartening. I'd asked Ann to have a moment to talk with you all, and I think we're going to spend some more time in an upcoming meeting, really kind of introducing you to the Continuum of Care and to our strategic plan and the work that's sort of planned around addressing homelessness locally. But I wanted to snag just a few minutes here because it's so exciting to see these issues of homelessness showing up in goals. With that said, kind of going back to what Poonam mentioned earlier about needing to really focus on those things that each group, that any one entity can do with excellence. The Continuum of Care has an independent board as well as a number of community-based committees. It's comprised of about 50 local organizations, and all told about 200 individuals are involved in various aspects of the Continuum's planning processes. And these goal areas are all things that group has been working on and that they're really charged with trying to tackle with excellence, which isn't to say that there aren't great opportunities to improve, and also that there isn't great need for more hands in that work, right? But as I think about partnership between the Continuum of Care and how we leverage the expertise that they have there with the expertise and in scope and authority that you all have as a city commission. One, I think my request is that we find ways to really work in partnership. We've done, over the last year, we've done a lot of work with the city staff, county staff, and then the Continuum of Care to start really thinking about regional planning approaches as they relate to homelessness, bringing all of our plans into alignment. So in the past, what you would find is that maybe one government had a plan that was going in one direction, another government maybe had a different plan, and then the Continuum of Care had an entirely different plan with no resources behind it. And so we really work to try to bring those together. And my hope is that as we work alongside you all in this commission with a Continuum of Care, that we can find a way to do that here as well, so that we can really reinforce that there's a shared strategy about how we address homelessness going forward, and allow the group that sort of HUD and the local community has charged with that task to sort of lead. And And with that, I think the thing that's the most exciting, I think for years, and anyone who's kind of been around the issue of homelessness knows that we have spent years talking about lack of funding, right? And certainly, like, we could use every dollar we have available at our disposal today and we would still have a gap, absolutely. But our real gap at this time is affordable housing, right? So right now we have federal dollars, we just don't have units to move people into. Even if we like move out of the pandemic space, the shortage of affordable housing is really what's creating our crisis. And so when we think about homelessness response, we're really treating a symptom. And my hope is that as we work with you, we can lean on you folks really to be driving that work that's about increasing the availability of housing units and affordable units and supportive units in particular in the community, and then trusting our community network in the continuum of care to really do that work around how to respond to homelessness within that infrastructure. So I think that's just sort of my request for consideration to the group as you think about issues of homelessness and how they play in, that I think from our side of a system, we are the most hopeful to see your work result in the creation of new units or the reconfiguration of existing units to increase affordable housing access. And for our system to be really focused on the how do we then address homelessness locally.
Thanks, Jason. And I'll say that as he indicated, I think in a future meeting, it will be really good to have more information on TPCH and what they do and how this commission can connect to them more and collaborate more. But felt like as we're going through the goals, it's helpful to at least get everyone that background info.
Around the Section 8 voucher program, there is always a ton of room for improvement around eliminating barriers and maximizing the vouchers. I will tell you that in the past year and a half, we've made incredible progress on maximizing the vouchers. We do know that there's probably continues to be barriers, especially with the inventory of units and landlord requirements. But my thought around this is that we do an annual update, sometimes more than an annual update, but we do have our Board of Commissioners meeting that happens once a month with Mayor and Council. I'm happy to share what those issues are as an update to meetings, so that way the commission can have an understanding of what's happening with that program and be able to provide recommendations on what we share. So I think this can be part of our normal, regular update to the commission, which would allow for additional comments. So I can say that there's probably a year and a half ago, I probably would have wanted a heck of a lot more help. But we are definitely have made an incredible progress, and we are actually fully at capacity now with our vouchers. And I could say this past year, the majority of those went to those who were homeless, of those new vouchers that we handed out last year. So just something to give you some input on. And then identifying city land that is available for housing. I'm going to let Ann speak to this. I think we'll be able to provide you some critical information around this this is a project we've been working on.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. I do see there are a couple of questions. Jim, not sure if you want to take those now or.
Why don't you guys go ahead and finish going through these last three, and then we'll open it up.
Okay. So on this one, identify city land that is available for housing. One update I did want to say is that as staff, we have been doing an analysis of existing city land and mapping it and looking at the zoning and looking for opportunities. And that's something that at a future meeting, I would love to bring to you all to provide comment on. Also, always, as Liz had indicated, really appreciate your all's expertise and enthusiasm. And if you happen to see land that you think would be a great fit for the city, like I think there is opportunities around land, but thinking back to the review, investigate, recommend, we know you're all volunteers, don't necessarily expect you to do the identifying it. We know what land the city owns. We're doing this analysis. We will definitely take it to you for input on what you think, if you think we're headed in the right direction, and what the criteria should be to prioritize affordable housing development on existing city land or future city land.
The identifying new funding opportunities, I think, is a great place for the commission to focus on. And then creating an education program for longtime residents to provide information around tools to mitigate displacement and build capacity. You know, I definitely heard some great ideas in the last meeting around what this might look like. And definitely is something that I think could be a value added in our community. So those are just some of my thoughts and just a review of those goals from my perspective, from the department's perspective. Chairman Jim, I'll hand it over.
Okay, Poonam, did you want to lead this part, or do you want me to?
Well, let's see if there's. So let me just do a reality check, Jim. Do you want to finalize the short term before we go to long term, or do you want to go through all of the goals and then come back and do the ranking?
I guess I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. Let's go ahead and have some discussion around the short-term goals. These are the ones less than 2 years. We can talk quickly about the long-term goals, and then we'll vote.
Great. So I thought, Liz, you've been waiting, and Mindy, your hand was up and now it's down? Okay. So Liz Wilson, there you are. Hi.
Go ahead, Liz.
Yeah. So I just wanted to see if we could have some discussion about the Section 8 voucher program and just rephrase that to just all housing choice vouchers, because I know there are just lookalike programs and all sorts of things. I know that for me, when I was doing housing case management, I worked with HOPWA, ENT, and I did a lot of outreach to the housing authority trying to find other lookalike programs, and there's just no accessible information for the public of other lookalike programs. So I think that a goal of mine would be just public information of available housing choice voucher programs. And then I know that there are housing navigators for assistance, but just continuing to maintain that support as we continue to develop housing affordability.
Okay, so Liz, not specifically Section 8, if I look at the fourth to the bottom bullet, which would, I guess, so it's review. It's to review them, but then I also heard you say, and to really actively promote the availability of them. So could we modify that one?
Yeah.
Right, to I think as we're doing it, so.
And I think there's value to that as well, because I will say that we get regular questions I get emails every day. You know, what
sure.
So, you know, if there's a way for people to be able to, you know, see where they might fit in, you know, there is, I think there's value to that.
And so this would be one, so if, so it would be review and promote, because we presume your review will result in understanding. Otherwise, that would be a really unproductive meeting.
Yeah, and then folks can get hooked up with those agencies for that coordinated entry process, and it would just be
so this would be as a short-term goal, right? In response to the question, if we went after this with vigor and delivered excellence, would that move the needle? That's the consideration. And we've just
I mean.
And we don't need to, right now, you don't need to think about the exactly how, because if this is one of the 2 to 3 goals that this group says, we're going to deliver this with excellence, you will figure out the how. And clearly that's going to have a lot to do with working closely with Jason and the continuum of care. It's not to invent new stuff, it's to add some real sort of octane, right? So yeah, thank you. That was a great, super. And Mindy, your hand is up.
Thank you. One of the other pieces one of the reasons why I brought, this is the same, sorry. the Section 8 housing that people are in are most all in apartments or neighborhoods that are heavily, lots of crime, and drugs and alcohol and criminal activity, where our most vulnerable populations are being, are accepted for the, I'm so sorry. It's an anniversary tonight of my husband's passing. So I'm getting text from my family. We're supposed to be light. And so bear with me. So my biggest concern about Section 8 is not only increasing the number of Section 8 housing, but where that housing is. That we need to look at the quality of the neighborhoods where the Section 8 housings are at.
So Mindy, first, thank you for trusting us.
Yes.
And we're all very sorry for your loss. Yeah, these are hard days. So just honor you and feel you, and you are in safe space. So said that out loud. Is that a short-term, what I just heard you say is that Section 8, we need to improve the quality of those of the places that are available for Section 8 voucher users. Is that a short-term goal, or is that something to consider for the long-term list? Right, so right now we're working on what can we deliver with excellence in the next 12 months? That to me sounds like a lot. What's that?
To me, it's an immediate goal.
Oh, okay.
In that, many of our, yeah.
So did you capture?
I attempted to add some qualifiers based on Mindy's comment. And then I think that in bullet number 1, providing recommendations on activities, levers, tools, one of the recommendations that Phoenix is working on is prioritizing new housing in areas of opportunity. And this is where, when I mentioned, we'll definitely want your input, they're developing a scoring matrix for where to prioritize affordable housing, which would include opportunities for voucher holders. And so I can absolutely see the commission being really helpful weighing in on that.
Is it possible? And
if I can just add something, I'm sorry. Instead of decent housing, HUD has something called the Healthy Homes Initiative, and it does take into account urban blight. And so I think if you use just healthy housing, that might be.
Yeah, healthy and safe.
Yeah, healthy and safe.
You know, one of the things that I have seen, you know, we've worked in some pretty bad parts of town, both here in Tucson and up in Phoenix, building affordable housing projects, and you can't, the new affordable housing projects that are built these days, you really can't tell the difference between an affordable project and a market rate project. They look the same from the outside. They really do. And, you know, it's more prevalent in Phoenix, I think, than Tucson, but what we've seen is when we put a project into a blighted area, other people take notice, and, you know, they start to also invest, and it can help bring up an entire area, you know, once the development is done, and, you know, what that's worth.
That's right.
That does take time.
And is it possible for you to convert the bullets into numbers? You're the best. There she is.
Okay. So
any
before
other?
Before we move to the long term, I guess I'd just like to put it out to the other commission members. Jay, Sharia, sorry, I keep butchering your name.
Sharia.
Lori, any of you? Vicky, I see you raising your hand.
I just had a comment. There's so not much about disability. I know in the draft mission and purpose, there is some mention of accessibility, and we talked last time about what that could mean. I just have to say, I feel like all of these goals really focus on a lot on the homeless population, and maybe it's the intent to include disabled, but I don't feel it reflected in what is written. And so I do have a concern about that. And I saw that, you know, universal design was captured as an extra theme, but it's not part of the goals that I saw. And I mean, if that is something that people are LIC inclusive, it just seems like most places it just says affordable housing, and I just don't want the accessible part to get lost, because when the focus is only on affordable without considering the accessibility piece, you know, the disabled kind of get lost, and then we end up in situations where we have to go back and renovate. I have 2 calls right now from different housing sites wanting to know what they can do to, you know, to make changes to make things accessible. And they've been in existence for a long time. It's really a lot easier to create it from the beginning, because making something accessible means that disabled can use it, but also everybody else can. But if you don't consider access from the beginning and you don't make it accessible, then only people without certain disabilities can use it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
No, important point. So Vicky, I think Anne included the word inclusive in number 1 to try to make it more explicit. And in number 7, review and promote the voucher programs, to safe, accessible, added the word accessible there explicitly, and healthy housing. Would that say to a disabled person, we see you? Because that's what I'm hearing you say, and that's important.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and the one I looked at, I didn't see it. It's a little hard to see.
No, Vicki, I'm adding it based on.
Oh,
it is real time. It is real time.
Oh, okay.
No,
Could you? Oh, yeah. That helps. Thank you. I couldn't really see number 2.
It's number 1.
Or number 1. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
number 1 and 7 are the 2 changes. So
yes, thank you.
Number 1, the word inclusive was added, and in number 7, the word accessible.
Okay, thanks. Yes, thank you.
Great, good catch.
Thank you. Yeah, good points.
Anything else?
Any other comments on the short term before we move on to the long term?
I'll just real quick, Liz, Mindy, Vicky, thanks. That's some good stuff. I like that.
So we'll go into the long term. You know, delivering 1,000 new units within the city of Tucson. I do think, you know, that in the conversation that Anne was talking about earlier around the market study and working with City of Phoenix to understand how they got to their numbers. I like having a goal. I also think it needs to be time centered. I think there's a lot of room for improvement around this goal. Is my opinion on number 2 of a voter approved housing bond. I know Shariah, I love your passion around that, and I support that from a non-political point of view, being a city employee. So, you know, those are, I do think that's very specific and very measurable, and something you could, I think is worth the effort of this commission. And I'm gonna give Anne some space here in case there's anything you want to add to those first 2.
No, I agree with you. Just for context, the 1,000 new affordable housing units, Phoenix has identified a gap of 50,000. And shoot, I thought I had it here. Sorry, I was going to tell you. Create or preserve 50,000 homes by 2030 is their goal. But they have a bigger gap than we've identified through our housing market study.
Hey, Jim, question for you, Mr. Chairman. Would it be beneficial to, for each of numbers 1 through 7, to add a by pick the year? Because 2 to 5 years is a pretty broad span.
Well,
that can also be a later, it can be a discussion for another day, right? As you start to work on.
You're going to say 1,000 new affordable units. I think that's a 5-year goal.
Right. So do you want to explicitly say by 2020, by 2026?
Yeah.
Or can we just offer to say we want to develop a measurement or?
Yeah. Well, if you pick it as one, again, this is still just we're putting the ideas out. And if this is one that everyone feels strongly about, then it's going to be one that you will have to maybe create a committee around, put on as a regular agenda topic. So all of that can come. Okay, never mind.
I think, yeah, if we could, I mean, the basic purpose of the goals is to try to help focus the organization, and I see the next step being establishing committees, individuals to start to drill down. And if the committee comes back and recommends, a change to the goal, I think the commission can address that.
Okay. Regarding number 3, addressing housing segregation, I think we had a really good discussion in the last meeting. I think that's pretty straightforward. And again, I would think that this is very much within the purview of this commission. Number 4, expanding number of small to mid-sized scale local developers, I think is a great goal. I know the county has been working very much on this, and they would love to see this as a long-term goal as well. Emergency shelters for gender non-binary. Thankfully, we have an administration that's already made some changes around that, but it is important to continue to work with our local shelters around that. And again, it can be a recommendation. Just understand we don't fund all emergency shelters, and the ones we do, we're not necessarily their primary funder. So how much I think this is more about influence versus policy, but we can certainly put a policy from the city perspective around things that we fund. So this could definitely be a recommendation the commission gives to the mayor and council. Number 6, provide recommendations on policies to accelerate available permanent supportive housing using a housing first approach. I know that this is very near and dear to the mayor. And so if there is recommendations you have on that, I think that is also a worthy goal. And then number 7, identify funding opportunities for affordable housing. I definitely think that's an ongoing, and every year there's new opportunities. So I think this is something the commission should constantly be looking at and providing recommendations around that. And Anne, do you have anything you want to add to what I stated?
No, I think that's good. And Liz, I saw your comment, so change that from the Liz Wilson, changed that one.
Good. The other key thoughts, Anne, do you want to talk about those?
I just during the last meeting, I thought people brought up some really important points that I wanted to make sure were captured and we consider moving forward. And so that's just what that section of that document is.
And then Shreya's had her hand up for a minute.
Oops.
You're muted, honey.
Sorry, I just was gonna, about the second goal, the first goal. Yeah, I don't think we kind of tabled it, but I was just wondering if we could, go refine that as we go along, because I also agree that I think it being the number being reflective of the gap, which I think what's our gap is closer to 15,000 units, right? More or less. Maybe that makes some sense as well, similar to the way Phoenix did it. But again, we can table that for later. It's fine.
And I think that, Shreya, so as we go through the next step, which is to sort of have your rank order the long term. What we will know for this discussion is that we are declaring it on a 2 to 5 year basis. And if that surfaces as one of the ones you're going to go vigorously and achieve excellence in, then absolutely it requires much more discussion, much more specificity, and then a specific sort of tactical plan for how you're going to achieve excellence on it. Where all of the things, there's lots of nuance to be, but there's no point in having the nuanced discussions unless it's something you're going to go after with vigor. That's sort of the chicken and egg.
So to drill down on that first one, I guess the question I have for Liz and Ann is, what do you guys estimate the number of new affordable housing units that are brought on each line for the city right now? Do you think it's 100 or 200 or 50? What do you think our current production is roughly?
So here's my thought on that is we have influence, for instance, with funding, whether it's with home funds, often the work that we have been doing in the past, let's just say in the past 5 years, has been in supporting light tech developers through vouchers or through that type of thing. So, and now the city, we are looking at doing some more direct projects. So I think what we're going to see in the coming years is going to be a lot more than what we've seen in the past years. And again, how do we count it? What do we count? Do we count, our partnerships with nonprofit developers who do low-income housing tax credit? I think yes, but we can't, it's not a city project necessarily, but maybe city supported. So those are some of the things I think I'd like to work through to make sure we know what are we counting towards the goal. And I think anything that we can take credit as a community, not as a city, but as a community towards this effort, I think is really important. So I throw that out there, but I could say easily on an annual basis, we're seeing probably 100 to 200 public affordable units. But also, if we look at this past year, we could say we increased about by 500-600 just in terms of using the vouchers. So it's just one of those things that the question is, what are we counting?
Okay, so maybe the 1,000 is not the right metric. I was thinking, we were developing maybe 100 new affordable units a year. So if we did 1,000 over 5 years, that would double the production. So do you think we need to adjust that number, Liz?
My honest opinion is I don't think we should set that number. I think we need to have some real discussion around the data and bring in the different partners and say, what is within the ability for the city to impact and what is the greater community doing. So I'm just not at a place where I feel comfortable putting a number there.
So one thing you could do, Jim, is to just rejigger number 1 to say deliver a specific TBD number, right? So the point of the goal is that you're going to declare a number, which hopefully will be enough for you all right now to decide if this is the one that you want to be excellent at, right? Is one of the ones that you want to go after. So a specific number of new affordable. Yeah, so I would just toss in the word specific before number. Deliver a specific number. And that number would be, we'll still require a little bit of work to figure out what that number should be, right? To make it something that will actually move the needle in a significant way in terms of provision of roofs and hope for people.
Okay, so you want to put a TBD next to the word number in parentheses?
Yeah, right. Good idea. So after the word number, there we go. Which I think is a TLA, isn't it, Jim?
It's another TLA.
3-letter acronym.
All right, Sharia, did you have anything else to dovetail off of that?
No, that's it. That's kind of what I thought too. This makes a lot more sense to me. Thank you.
Okay. Mindy?
I had my hand up about this one too, and was thinking 1,000 is a insufficient number to shoot for. That I think in deliver a specific number, I think it's deliver, I just had the word in my head and it went out. sufficient number. We need to go, for me, I have to think about it in very finite ways of going for what must be done to take care of people. So words like specific doesn't resonate as well as sufficient. If we're gonna do it, let's just do it.
Go hard. Yeah.
Wholeheartedly, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
How do we measure success on that?
I think that that's where we would be working with getting a handle on how many people are living without a home. That is there. I think there's, I don't know, but I believe that there are agencies and organizations that do a homeless count every year. We need to take a look at where the eviction processes are at, how the pandemic has affected people that are going to be newly homeless that we have to project out to. Good question, Jim. I don't know the answer to that.
So after that process though, Mindy, you would, I'm hearing that you still would want to declare a number, but just, and you want to be sure that that number is sufficient, not sort of void of real need.
Correct.
Yeah. So I don't think, Jim, she's saying don't want a number. She's saying let's pick that number and let's be bold about it. Let's actually solve a problem, not just try to make a divot in it.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm good with stretch goals.
Yeah.
Liz, do you have a comment?
No, I'm
yeah.
Oh, that Liz. I'm sorry.
I think he means
yes.
You're okay. We gotta start using last names more clearly. Yeah. I have a comment on 3 of them, and it's brief. So number 3, I think that instead of lack of access to opportunities, it should just be access to opportunities, because I would imagine the goal is for people to access opportunities. Number 1, I think a really good way to make this very clear would be to review evidence and deliver no less than 50% of affordable housing units based on the evidence. And then I think that's just a suggestion. I do SMART goals all day long. And then number 2, I do have a question, which is, are we permitted to do political actions like attempt to get a ballot measure for people to vote on, onto a ballot? Because that would be going on the street, canvassing, all these other things. And is there an action that we can do that would be more appropriate as commission members, rather than, doing a political act like that, that could support us getting a housing bond? And what would that be?
I'm happy to jump in and say I don't fully know the answer to your question, but what I do know is that it is mayor and council that would put a bond referendum on a ballot for voters to then approve. And so my guess would be, and I'm happy to look into this more, this commission could recommend to mayor and council that they move forward at some point when it makes sense to do you could recommend that mayor and council put a bond initiative on the ballot. Good point. And that, I know as city staff member, as Liz alluded to, we certainly can't advocate for how voters should vote. And I don't know how politically engaged City of Tucson commission members could be there. And that's something I have to clarify.
Can we maybe change the phrasing so that it's not pass a voter approved housing bond, but it's a little bit more neutral, because I don't want it to have the appearance of impropriety,
Mm. I'm trying to, I've thought about 4 different things in my head and keep deleting. But something about recommending to mayor and council exploration of something like that.
Shreya, what do you think?
Yeah, I just was gonna jump in real quick and say that we'd have to review, I would assume these would be general obligation bonds, right? Not something that, for example, the IDA, there's 2 types of bonds, right? There's the general obligation, and then there's the other one that's something that the IDA approves, which are, I forget.
Let's review bonds.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. I also think, but the general obligation bond is the type of bond that was passed the last time that was the housing bond. And so again, I think we would need to review that history and, you know, re-go through how they went about getting that. But that was over a decade ago. So that was like almost 12 years ago. So it's been a long time since it's been done. But again, because it's something that mayor and council approved and we're making recommendations directly to mayor and council, this is one of those things that I think we do have the power and influence to do. And even just us, again, I think it is a recommendation. I don't think we can sway voters either way. But at the same time, there's a lot of political allyship that has to happen for these things to get passed, which is why I feel like us having that backing and having that's part of how to me, we are responsibly using our power and influence.
And I would say at this point, you don't need to solve for the how, right? If this feels like one of the things that this commission will go after with vigor and deliver with excellence 2 to 5 years from now, is passage of some bond mechanism to support affordable housing. Should that be on your 20% of things that will yield 80% of our actions? That's really the question at this point, right? And once you declare it, then you build structure to be excellent. So you're going to create committees that, if that's one of the ones that shows up, a committee will be formed, and a lot more discussion will need to happen to figure out, how to keep you all safe and legal, and wildly effective. And you will so figure that out. I know it.
Sorry, I was starting to add additional language and then I saw 7 and realized, well, that would make sense to be specific for a housing bond.
Yes, good idea. And I think, Jay, you've been waiting a long, you've been waiting a long time. You get most patient award today so far.
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments. I was, thinking about the idea of the SMART goals, right? And particularly about achievable and realistic. And though I like number 1 in the sense of, getting more affordable housing out on the market, I guess my question is, as a commission, how do we as a commission actually do that? That's not something that we are actually we're not going to build affordable housing. So, does that mean that we're, recommending to mayor and council that a sufficient number comes on the market? So in terms of being realistic and achievable, I guess that's my question about number 1. Number 2, I feel like it's getting ahead of itself a little bit as well. I mean, I feel like, research needs to come first in order to be able to think, oh, well, we think this is a good idea and therefore we want to recommend it. So I don't know if there's something about, exploring or researching or whatever, bonds. And I feel like, 2 and 7 kind of go together, right? I mean, that would be a new funding opportunity. So I'm just wondering if, bonds is one of the, new funding opportunities that we explore. And then finally, number 4, again, I really like the idea. I'm just wondering, like, how is that measurable? I mean, is there some sort of list of local, quote unquote, local developers? How would we measure whether or not there end up being more local developers? Because, of course, like any business, developers kind of come and go, and, who's local, who's not. So I'm just, again, wondering, if we want to have more local development going on, how do we measure that? And then the last thing I wanted to say as well is, Liz Wilson, you mentioned a ballot initiative, and then that kind of got mixed in with the idea of, a housing bond. So, I guess I don't know if they're the same thing. I mean, a ballot initiative is something that, citizens can do, get signatures and get something on the ballot, versus mayor and council, I guess putting the bond measure on the ballot. So I guess I don't know exactly where I'm going with that, but there seemed to be a little nuance. And I didn't know, Liz, if you were, speaking about a ballot initiative from like citizens, or, something mayor and council would do in terms of a bond. So those were just kind of the thoughts that I had about the different goals there.
Do you want me to clarify that, Jay, at all? Or do you want me to leave it?
Either way, I didn't know for sure, you know, if we were talking about, you know, trying to come up with our own initiative that we got people to sign, you know, ballots for, signatures for to actually get on the ballot versus, you know, a recommendation to mayor and council to put a bond on the ballot. I just felt like there were different things and I wasn't sure exactly one or both or where we were going with that.
No, the way that the long-term goal was phrased, it was written to say, like, get a voter something passed. And so I had expressed like that it looked improper for our commission.
Okay. So Jim, it looks like we may be, if Rachel has been able to incorporate in real time the richness of this discussion, Rachel, can you give us a hand signal or a thumbs up or something? If you are ready, great. Then if you are game, the next step would be to first have you consider the short term. What are the things that we will be excellent at in the next 12 months? And literally pick your first, second, and third priorities personally. So are we ready to do that, Jim, or is there any other discussion? I feel like there's a natural break. Yeah. Okay. I think
we're ready.
Then Rachel, if you could.
Great. As Rachel, as you're getting this poll launched, a couple of reminders. We have a few people that aren't, we want commission members to vote. That includes ex officio. So please, ex officio members, please also vote. So voting and ex officio. And I'm trying to count how many there are so I know how many votes there should be. Okay.
There are 9.
But there are more than that, including voting and non-voting.
I count myself.
I count 11.
We have 4 with Dan Sullivan's fill-in, so 11. Is Joel still with us?
Joel, is there a Joel sighting? Joel, are you still there?
Looks like Joel might have.
Yeah, I think Joel.
I think Dan and Joe are interchangeable. So if
yeah, he's gone and I'm in.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so yeah, we have 11.
I count 12 between voting and non-voting right now.
Jim, Mike, Shreya, Liz, Jay, Mindy, Lori, Marianne, Mark, Dan, and Liz.
This is Vicky. I might have thrown things off by being late.
Oh, that's it. Vicky was there.
Vicky, there you are, 12. You're right.
That is 12.
Hi, sorry, Vicky. I apologize. I messaged Anne and not you, Jim. I'm sorry.
We're just glad you're here. And now we're glad that we got our numbers to reconcile. So 12.
And how, Rachel, do you want to give any directions on the poll? Do you want to launch it and talk through it? Up to you.
Sure, I could just give a brief overview of it really quick too. I'll be launching 2 separate polls. So the first one will be for the short-term goals only, and the second will be for the long-term goals. And then within the poll, there will be 3 questions. So that would just be ranking your highest priority, your second highest priority, and then your third highest priority in ascending order. So I'll launch the poll.
And it'll just show up as a pop-up on the middle of your screen. There it is.
And you can scroll.
Yeah, and you'll scroll, so you'll see it's actually 3 questions, but they're the same options, short-term options, 10. So number 1 is, which is your highest priority? Pick one.
I'll just pick one out of these.
In number 1, pick one of the first 10, and then you'll see number 2 if you scroll down. And okay. For number 2 is, what is your second priority? It's the same list, but we're then asking you to give us your second one. And then number 3 is same list, but we're asking for your third priority.
So I'm just.
Does anyone know the Jeopardy tune that has any kind
I
of
was
thing?
in the studio audience as Jeopardy won.
You were? You were?
Yeah. And Alex Trebek was my cousin's landlord.
Wow.
What a place to talk about that, huh? Apparently he's a real funny, weird guy.
He's, I grew up in Canada. He's a Canadian. So we all have known Alex Trebek forever.
Apparently he drives like a white Bronco, like OJ. And like he drove it like until he died. That was like his thing.
Rachel, can you tell how many people have voted so you'll know?
Yes. Right now we have 8 out of the 12.
I'm very slow with.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time.
Take your time.
Yeah, I am too.
This is not a timed. This is not a timed test.
It's my belief.
It probably wasn't helpful that I asked about Jeopardy and stuff. So sorry about that. We will now be quiet.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Phew.
Okay, yeah, we have the 12 out of the commission members. So I will end the poll.
12 out of 12 makes you 100%. Boom.
And I will.
And then you're going to go to the long-term ones. Oh, there.
Oh,
so now you can see it. This is one way, but you're going to see it in a slightly different way in a minute. But this is the instant one. So, you know, almost half of you placed as your highest priority that provision of recommendations to the mayor and council on how they could do better existing things to, you know, make some progress in affordable housing. Then you can come down and see 1 in 4 of you said identify new funding opportunities. 17% said recommendations on policies to increase, accelerate permanent supportive housing. Equally, same number of you said review and promote available voucher programs. So those are the big 4 that came in. And for your second priority, you'll see your number 1 in 4 of you said learn and understand what's preventing housing from being built. What are the barriers? But close behind, it looks like you've got 3 with 17, 4 with 17% responding. And then the third, and you're going to see these in a different way. So don't worry about the data right now. I just want to give you a sneak peek of it. And then for your third priority, you'll see 17, 17, and then again, one that's got the 25%, which was the education program. Okay, Rachel, you ready for the long-term one?
Hold on. This was the first one. Oh wait, sorry.
And are you doing the Excel spreadsheet, right?
I'm doing the Excel. Well, a few of us are, but I want to make sure we screenshot all of these before we move on.
Okay. Then you tell us when we don't want to remove either belts or suspenders, because what could happen ain't okay. So normally we'd be in a room and we would do this together. This is the first time doing it in a virtual. So thank you for your Gumby-like flexibility. And for those of you that are too young to know who Gumby is, it was a toy that us boomers played with that was really bendy. Gumby in its little donkey pony. Pokey.
Okay.
Okay, so we're done with this one?
We're good.
Great. Then Rachel, if you could put up the second one. Now this is for your long-term goals, 2 to 5 years, and it's exactly the same thing. So you'll see the same 7 options listed 3 times. The first time, question 1 is, which is your first priority? Number 2 would be, which is your second priority? Finally, the third time you'll see that list is to give us your third priority, and take your time.
I just noticed that number 1 does not include all of the options that we discussed. If you look down at number 2, address housing segregation by race is in number 2, but it's not in number 1. So I don't know if that's true for more, but they're not all there.
Rachel, is it possible to add that in?
Yeah, I can end the poll right now and then I can edit and relaunch. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, good catch.
Yeah.
Thank you for catching that.
Jay, you are officially super sleuth of this commission, which doesn't even get you a parking spot, but you bragging rights.
Do you have detail oriented on your CV?
Listen, we can't leave home without one. That's the way that great commissions come together, right?
The only reason I saw that is because that one was mine. So no detail oriented. It's just being selfish, maybe self-centered.
You're just supposed to receive a compliment and say, thank you very much, Jay. That was a lot to repel the compliment.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the compliment. I am very detail oriented. And follow instructions well.
Indeed you do.
I apologize. Since I ended the poll, I'll just have to redo a poll, but I can do that really quick, but it'll just take a second. I'm sorry about that.
By the way, Rachel has been just an absolute wizard behind the scrim solving for all of the technology things that make baby boomers. I'm going to speak for myself only because it's dangerous water when I start including others, but for baby boomers like me, she's been a godsend. And Mindy understands exactly what I'm talking about, right? That's what this says. Bit like a Heinz ketchup commercial, isn't it?
We can, while Rachel's doing that, we can share the results of the term.
Rachel, let's do that, and then you can just take a full breath and blink. Please do both of those things, and then let's pull it up so that you're going to see it a slightly different way than the way that you saw it. Hopefully, this will be a little bit.
Jeremiah and Nelson, feel free to chime in if you feel like we're not quite ready, but I think we're good. Okay, I'm sharing. And thank you. There's more wizards behind the curtain than you see. So it looks like based on the current short-term voting, here's rank order in I. Here's the total points, but in rank order, the first one was providing a set of recommendations to mayor and council on activities, levels, tools, levers, tools, etc. Rank order number 2.
Yeah, here's what I want you to just notice as you just come up to that number. Looking at row number 1, which is the goal, number 1 goal, right? What you'll see then in column C is the number of people who selected that one goal as their first choice. Each time any of you selected that as your first choice, you essentially gave it 3 points. Then in column E, you see how many people selected it as their second choice. Each of you that selected it as your number 2 essentially gave it 2 points. And then the last column, for those of you that selected it as your third choice, you gave it a numeric value of 1. So then in column H, what you see is the total of the math. And so you can see how many of you selected it. In addition, it gives you some insight into the intensity with which you believe it. Does that make sense? So those are the 2 dimensions through this activity. And so you can see that number 1, I mean, that is a heads and shoulders. So the first place to look is at the total numbers, right? Just go down column G, or sorry, column H. And so maybe you can put can you shade that number 19 box bright yellow, just like a highlighter? No, not the whole column, just that box, yeah. Okay, highlight that. And then coming down, look at the other 10, which is the second biggest number, which is 15.
Second biggest is this one here.
It's 15. So highlight that. Third biggest
is number 6.
And then what's the next numeric total below that? So 19, 15, and 12.
12, 7.
Yeah. So,
ooh, wait, it looks like there are 2 7s.
Right. So what I want you to just observe is, again, it's a combination of those 2 things. Is how many, the frequency with which you picked it as individuals, plus the intensity with which you believe it. Both things matter, right? So what I'm saying here is you've got 3 that rise head and shoulders above the others, right? And they are the number 1, number 9, and number 6. You could say these are the 3 short-term goals that we as a commission are going to go vigorously pursue and deliver with excellence, period. And those 3 would be make recommendations for how the city, mayor, and council can just maximize every available existing thing they do, right? Second is to identify new funding opportunities for affordable housing. Third, provide recommendations on policies to increase available permanent supportive housing. You could just say those 3, because the next 2 are 5 below, right? They're both at 7, which is sort of a next layer down. And so what I see here, just as a natural sort of emergence, is that you've got 3 priorities, short term. And so now what I want you to do is to think about the mission, the why we exist that you approved earlier, and then look at these 3 short-term goals. And I mean, this is ask yourself the question, if we delivered these 3 with excellence in the next 12 months, would we be rising to meet our mission? That's sort of the last reality check, right? Otherwise, what I would say to you is you've got 3 clear short-term goals. Any questions or comments or reactions to that?
Poonam, I do have just one comment. I still would like to, for the sake of the commission, retain the other goals.
Absolutely.
We can always come back, because we work on a lot of these things and can come back to the commission and give updates. Even though the commission may not be actively working on it, these are things I know are important to the commission, and we can give, periodic updates on when we're working on those, when we're making progress on those items.
And that's an excellent, thank you for that. It's important, Liz, that's an important reminder. It is possible to have a circle of concern that is much broader. It is less possible to be excellent at too many things at the same time. And so this is about, what are you as a commission going to take on? What are you going to be accountable for? What are you going to sort of create structure in terms of committees, and how are you going to take this precious volunteer energy that all of you are contributing to yield the maximum benefit, right? That's really the thing. And so, yeah, it wouldn't, what I'm not saying is that these are the only 3 and forget the others. What I am saying to you is that you've got 3 that may be the 3 that all of you feel very strongly about. Maybe if you just went after these 3, you could be excellent, which is opposite to the, here are 10 that we're going to spend equal amounts of time on, because that is the formula for lack of excellence, right?
Liz Morales, goal number 4, is that built for 0 or build to 0? I don't remember what the term you used.
You're on mute, Liz.
I was going to say Jason can clarify, make sure. I believe it is built for 0.
It is built for 0.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so if you could, and when we go to the next question, if you could maybe just sort that so that they are in their priorities, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Rachel, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Oh, and Mindy's got her hand up. Mindy, you have a question or comment before we do this?
Well, I was going to suggest that we vote on goals, short-term goals.
Right, I think the thinking is at the back end of short-term, long-term, then yes, a motion to say, yep, we will adopt these.
Okay.
Something like that. Okay, Rachel, you ready?
Yep.
And promise me that you both were breathing and blinking, because sometimes I notice that you don't breathe and you're not blinking. Okay.
Yes.
So
Breathing, blinking, and quadruple checking. Okay, we hit the 12 commission members, so I'll end the poll now and share the results.
that was quick. Okay, so this just shows you in terms of the responses, right? So your highest priority for longer, and that's again, rises heads and shoulders above the rest, which is go through a process to declare that number and go after it of new units. And then it looks like you've got 3 tied at 17. As your first choice, move into the second choice. Your top choice was to address segregation. And followed by a quarter of you that said, let's focus on the policies to increase and accelerate available permanent supportive housing. And then your third priority is to identify new funding opportunities. A third of you said that, followed by the next, there are 2 tied at 17%. And then let's see, so you've now figured out that meanwhile, in the background, Anne and the team are furiously working on an Excel spreadsheet where they're actually taking this information. Thanks for your patience with the process. If we were in a room, you would all have little sticky notes and you would all be bumping into each other. It's really fun. Someday we will do that.
This is where, Mike, we might need your entertainment for a bit.
Right. Mike does slam poetry, which most of you missed before.
Oh yeah, yeah. Maybe we'll have some new reason for next meeting. Huh? What?
You know what, Mindy? I'm gonna turn to you. Tell us your husband's name.
Oh, Paul.
Paul. And the anniversary that you are marking today is?
Well, it's the Jewish calendar.
Yes.
It's 1 year. But he passed June 14th of last year. So tonight in Judaism, you start a remembrance the evening before. So tomorrow would have been the Jewish calendar date of his passing.
Right. So thank you for sharing that. And now we today will all honor and therefore be an extension of Paul's legacy. So thank you for that.
He was an amazing human being. And my partner, my person, my inspiration. Never would I have gotten to do the things that I did if it were not for him. So I appreciate that brilliant, brilliant brain of his, and the kindest human being. But I wanted to share while we're having, thank you so much for, he was the most loved of all of his siblings, of all of our circle of friends. Paul was the most beloved. Yeah, what a guy.
Thank you for sharing him. And I
have some interesting news to share with the commission. Careful what you wish for. I ran into a philanthropist in the community and spoke with him. He has 80 acres of land that he wants to build a homeless village on. And so it's not in an area that I would consider, but I think another kind of program for people who are chronically involved in the criminal justice system, it would be perfect. That just wanted you all to know that there's a very well connected, healed person that wants to build affordable housing for people that are homeless.
Wow. So those are the kinds of collisions and connections that all of you as a commission could explore with great vigor. It's awesome. Oh, I see. Anne, your hand is up.
I think we're good, unless Allison and Jeremiah, any concerns with me sharing at this point? We're good. I'm gonna take that as we're good.
Allison gave you a thumbs up. Allison is using emoticons or emojis or whatever those things are called. Okay, so this is
I rank ordered for Putum's comment here. So
these were the short term. No, these are the long term.
These are long term, yeah.
So here you have them. So if you look, you've got, really there's 4, right? If you look for a natural break. And again, it's a combination. You can see how many of you felt it as declared it as first, second, and third choice. And then you can see what the total is, which is a combination of frequency with intensity, right? So it looks like you've got 4 long-term goals. And then you can see what they are here. And then do we have the short-term ones visible? There they are. Could you enlarge this view just a little bit? Everyone see it? So here's the work that you've done, and here's the consensus that is revealing. And then the question is this true for us? And if yes, we should adopt it. We have a mission. We've now got 7 things that we have declared we're going to go after, short-term, long-term. And then you can backward map how you spend your time, how you construct committees, how you do your work, right? Everything else, all of the other goals, all of the other discussions, I think has been great guidance for staff, because I do think that on your agendas, you'll get periodic updates from Jason, from others, because they're, the other things will be within your circle of concern. The suggestion here is there are the things that I care about, but then there's the few things that I go after and actually get done. And so what this would suggest is that you are saying over the next 12 months, 3 things we're going to do with excellence. We're going to deliver a set of really badass recommendations. Forgive me for using the word badass in a public meeting, to the mayor and county or mayor and council. 2, we're going to identify new funding opportunities for affordable housing. 3rd, we're going to increase and accelerate. We're going to provide recommendations on policies to increase and accelerate available permanent supportive housing. So that's short term, and then rolling down to the long term. And while we are delivering those things with excellence in the short term, in the long term, we will also have dedicated, focused energy driving to these 4 outcomes over the next 2 to 5 years. 1, deliver, we're going to figure out the number of new affordable housing units within the city of Tucson. 2, we're going to address housing segregation by race, ethnicity, disability, and lack of access to opportunities. We're going to provide recommendations on policies to increase, accelerate available permanent. So you've got that in both short and long term. And then finally, identify new funding opportunities for affordable housing. That's again, both short and long. So essentially there are 7 goals, but there's really 5, right? Because 2 of them appear on both your short and long term. Did I get that right, Ann?
Yep.
Okay, so it's essentially 5 goals. And so now what you've got the opportunity to do is to say, okay, if these are the things that we're going to deliver with excellence, then we need a committee that's going to be meeting on a regular basis to literally get into the weeds, to figure out the execution, the tactical plan, and then deploy it and do whatever it takes, because that's how we are successful, right? And so let me stop here and see any comments or reactions.
Mindy, go ahead.
On the long-term goal, the language was still deliver 1,000 units rather than the newer language that we had just talked about.
Change it to the new language in your head. Yeah,
I did good
catch up there. Yeah.
Yeah, like all these goals are.
There's still a version.
Which I'm guessing they're going to be.
It's just they will be edited. Yeah. So just because they're in 2 different places, and so the wizards behind the screen were working on the math and let go of the language, but the language will be in the.
Thank you.
In the contemporized version.
Okay, so before we make a motion to approve the goals, I just want to thank Poonam for participating on this with us. I know that, I think one of the strengths of this board is we have a lot of people coming from different backgrounds with a different perspective, but it's also, it creates challenges in terms of trying to get everybody focused on the same thing. So I appreciate you being involved in helping us through this. So thank you very much. You did a good job.
Thank you so much for that tepid applause. I really appreciate it. Listen, I am a fangirl of the city of Tucson, and part of what makes me such a fan is that now I've worked with the city and the staff and some awesome community citizens since January of this year. There's something very special, and it is in the spirit with which you all show up, and it is the depth of the commitment to solve stuff. And so that is not always the case in other communities. So you've got that, right? When you combine that with precision in execution, anything is possible. And so to Jim and to Mike, thank you and to Ann and Liz, thank you for allowing me to cannonball into another Zoom meeting with all of you awesome people in Tucson. And go get them, because this is a pernicious problem, and there isn't a single community in the country that's got the solution, not a one. And so, if we can leave everything on the field and, improve dramatically over what's currently happening, what we have just delivered is a whole bunch of hope and very real help for fellow human beings, but for the grace of God could be any of us. And so, yeah, so just thanks, Jim. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to ask if somebody would make a motion to approve the short-term and long-term goals as voted upon. So we've got the 3 short-term goals and the 4 long-term goals.
This is Lori, and I make a motion to approve the short-term and long-term goals.
Okay, and do we have a second?
I second that.
Okay, Okay, so we have a motion made by Lori and seconded by Mindy. Is there any further discussion before we put it out to vote? Okay, Michael Edmonds.
Aye.
Sharia.
Aye.
Monica. Oh, it's gone. Liz Wilson.
Aye.
Jay Young.
Aye.
Mindy Bernstein.
Aye.
Lori Meserbo.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Congratulations, everyone. This is great. I'm excited.
Jim?
Yes.
We have a question in the chat from Ernesto over at the Ward 3 office. He wanted to know if the goals are going to be sent out to the ward offices, like if we're notifying them. Are we notifying the council offices or the mayor?
We're going to keep it secret. Kidding. Sorry.
So, you know, I think one of the things that the mayor and council asked us to do was to develop a quarterly report, which we've not done anything thus far. I think I kind of feel like now we have something to report. So I think we should work on that this next month and get something out to them with what we've done so far. And, you know, my personal feeling, and I don't, you know, we need to kind of vet this out, but my personal feeling is the next step is going to be to establish, you know, somewhere between 1 and 3 committees to start working on these outside of the commission meetings, and then each of the committees can report back to the group with, you know, progress and findings. So I think I'd like to actually make that an agenda item for our next meeting, is to establish the committees and assign individuals to those committees. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to agenda item number 6, which is next steps. So we've got 2 options for our next meeting, June 29th and July 6th. Those are both Tuesdays. So July 6th is right after the 4th of July. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are likely going to be on holiday. So
I have to report to my funding sources on July 29th, so I would not be able to attend that meeting. Or, I'm sorry, June 29th? June 29th. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to attend that meeting.
All right, does July 6th not work for anyone? Okay, so let's go ahead and set our next meeting date for July 6th at 4 p.m.
This is Lori. Is it possible for us to maybe discuss the time frame of the meeting in the next meeting? I know that we had said 4 to 6 to make sure that it was accessible to folks, and thus far we haven't had people attending. So I'm just wondering if 4 to 6 is truly the best time, and if folks are open to talking about it.
Yeah, I would prefer, again, for having kids and dinner and all that, it's tough. 4 to 6 is tough. I would prefer a little bit earlier, even just like what we had before, which was like 3 to 5. But I don't know if anyone else.
I would not be able to attend meetings any longer, personally. So
if it was at 3 o'clock?
Yeah, I run an entire I'm the only staff member running an entire program. So I report, unfortunately, it's just the staffing. But y'all can have meetings without me. Feel free. You can fill my seat. It's fine.
You know, we had a couple people that were absent this month, but in general, we've had fairly good attendance. So Liz, is normal work hours are out for you in general? Is that a true statement, or?
I work in Marana from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I've been given leave to attend these meetings from 4 to 6. So
okay.
I understand that everyone else probably also has a busy work schedule and has lives. And like, I don't want to be in the office till really late myself. Like, I've been given a lot of flexibility for the commission, but if it were different hours, then I wouldn't be able to run an entire program.
All right, well, let's keep it as it is for now, Sharia, and we can, you know, if you need to drop off early or something, we'll figure that out. Okay, in terms of agenda items, Liz or Ann, do you want to, there's 3 items that were proposed. Do you want to talk through what those are?
And Jim, thinking about what we just heard in terms of talking about the subcommittees and people to sit on the subcommittees, I think that's going to be an important one that will take some time. And then a couple that were proposed, whether it's next meeting or a future meeting, in thinking about the commission making recommendations, we do want to take an item to you on the Sunshine Mile overlay includes an affordable housing density bonus that we would like to talk with the commission about and hear your thoughts on that. So that one is timely. It looks like it's probably going to be going to council, back to council later in July or August. And then there was a, Liz Wilson, feel free to jump in. I believe you had recommended an item about feeding homeless. That is a future one. And then Mindy, a property analysis. Those are things I've heard from commissioners.
I'd like to jump in. There's something besides the Sunshine Mile overlay. Another priority were some things that mayor and council already gave us direction on for the commission that we need to go over. So I was kind of waiting for this process to be done before we introduce that. So that should also be prioritized.
Okay. Any other agenda items that someone would like to see on our next meeting? Okay. Well, it is exactly 6 o'clock. We did a great job.
Check you out. You show off. You're showing. Now you're just showing off.
So we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you all, and we'll see you on July 6th.
Thank you all.
Be well. Stay
Thank you.
hopeful. Stay hopeful.